Thank you very much and welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'll be starting off with an update on self-employed details, the new information that came out yesterday, together with some time on time to pay. Then I'll be handing across to one of my partners, Barry, to talk about the job retention scheme, and then he's going across to another partner, Ben, who's going to talk about the business interruption loan scheme and small business grant funding. And then we'll come back to various other tips and pointers and talk about business survival and recovery coming out the other side. There's a lot of information out there already. We're just trying to give our take and some up-to-date details as we see it. So please do keep your questions and answers going. Right, so last night the Chancellor announced the much-awaited support for self-employed businesses and people. The details that he announced were something that he tried to make similar to that available for furloughed employees. So it's going to be a taxable grant to self-employed people with 80% of their average monthly profits over the last 3 years up to £2,500 per month. That's going to be available for 3 months. They'll extend it as if necessary. And the claim is going to be, I think, initiated from HMRC from their systems. They will be writing or sending an email to everybody they think is eligible with an online form to complete. And those funds are expected to hit the self-employed individuals' bank accounts in one lump sometime around the middle or the beginning of July. They're trying to get things in sooner, but obviously their systems and processes need to be brought in. Now, that is going to give a gap for some people and that's going to cause issues, but this is where it stands at the moment. So this is available to anybody with self-employed or partnership profits up to £50,000. If it's a partnership, I believe that it is the individual's share of the partnership that counts rather than the partnership profits as a whole. I haven't seen that clarified yet, but it's logical that it should be that. Also, if you have mixed income, it's the majority of your income being self-employed, more than 50% or more. So if you have a job or if you have some rental income, in other investment income, as long as the self-employed is more than 50%, then you'll be eligible for this. That's going to be based upon a possible combination of things, that an average of the last 3 years profits for the 16, 17, 17, 18 and 18, 19 tax years. All those returns should have already been submitted to HMRC and they'll have the relevant information in their systems. There is something for any late submission of the 2019 tax return. You can submit that in the next 4 weeks if you haven't already done so. For newer self-employed persons, it will just be looking at the 2019 tax year. So that is a broad brush on that scheme. There are some questions coming through in some more details, which we will answer towards the end of the session rather than interrupt this now. So I'll quickly move on to the time to pay and tax deferral allowances that have been announced already. VAT. Now, VAT is an automatic deferral of the current VAT quotas. A VAT payment that is due in the next 3 months is automatically deferred through to the 31st of March next year. No penalties, no interest. But it's important that if you are paying your VAT by direct debit, that you cancel the direct debit. HMRC have said that specifically. Don't rely on them not to take it. So that's action you need to take. And then as things unwind and we need to start paying VAT again, obviously that direct debit needs to be reinstated. Self-assessment payments on account due on 31st of July have been deferred. That is now for all. It was originally for self-employed only, but that's now been extended to everybody. That's been deferred through to the end of next January. Corporation tax, PAY and NIC. There are time to pay arrangements available for that, but those need a phone call to HMRC to arrange. And the phone number for that is, if you haven't found it, 0800 0159 559. So that's a broad outlook of where we are with the new self-employed stuff and tax deferrals. So next up on the agenda is my partner Barry, who is just firing up his camera. There we are. And he's going to be talking about the employee scheme and furloughing. So over to you, Barry.
Thank you, Neil. Good morning, everyone. So I want to give a brief summary regarding the coronavirus job retention scheme, which is probably one of the biggest areas of the government support they've brought in for the economy and individuals. So the coronavirus job retention scheme is a temporary scheme at the moment, open to all UK employers for at least 3 months from the 1st of March 2020. We expect the scheme to be up and running by the end of April, and it's designed to support all employers whose operations have been severely affected by the coronavirus. Now, employers are going to be able to use the portal to claim for 80% of the furloughed employees' usual monthly wage costs up to £2,500 per month. So it's the lower of 80% or £2,500. In addition to that, the employer can also claim for the associated employer national insurance contributions and the minimum automatic enrolment employer pension contributions on that employee's wage. The scheme is open to all UK employers that had created and started a PAY payroll scheme on the 28th of February this year. So who can claim? So basically it's any UK organisation with employees that can apply, including businesses, charities, recruitment agencies, public authorities. But you must have created and started a PAY payroll scheme on or before the 28th of February 2020 and have a UK bank account. Employees that you can claim for, i.e. furloughed employees, must have been on the PAY payroll on the 28th of February 2020. And they can be on any type of contract, including full-time employees, part-time, employees on agency contracts, and employees on flexible or 0-hour contracts. The scheme also covers employees who were made redundant on the 28th of February this year, but have since been rehired by their employer. Now, to be eligible for the subsidy when on furlough, an employee cannot undertake work for and on behalf of the organisation. This includes providing services or generating revenue. So while on furlough, the employee's wage will be subject to the UK usual income tax and other deduction. Now, it's an important point regarding not doing any work on behalf of the organisation. And I've seen that there's a number of questions from clients regarding whether directors qualify. Directors will qualify if they can prove that they are doing absolutely no work for the company or the business. So if you are still dealing with administrative matters, that would be deemed to be work and you won't qualify. The other major question that I can see is coming up all the time is many directors are on the structure that they take minimum pay under PAYE, i.e. around 8,500 currently per annum, and the rest in dividends. Unfortunately, it's only the PAYE element that will qualify. The dividends do not qualify for furlough pay. But I must stress that directors will need to prove that they are not working at all in the business for them to qualify for furlough. Now, if an employee is working but on reduced hours or on reduced pay, they won't be eligible either, because again, the employees must be totally out of work, although still employed by the company. So employers should discuss with their staff and make any changes to the employment contract by agreement. When employers are making decisions in relation to this process, including deciding who to offer the furlough to, equality and discrimination laws will apply in the normal way. So to be eligible for the subsidy, employees should write to their employee confirming that they've been furloughed and keep a record of the communication. So they should have some document that proves they've told the employee they're being furloughed and the employer has agreed to that in writing. Employees hired after the 28th February 2020 cannot be furloughed or claimed for in accordance with this scheme. Employees on unpaid leave cannot be furloughed unless they were paid on placed on unpaid leave after the 28th of February. Again, employees on sick leave or self-isolating should get statutory sick pay, but can be furloughed after the end of the statutory sick pay. And employees who are shielding in line with the public health guidance can be placed on furlough. So what about if you have an employee that has another job as well? So if an employer has more than one employer, they can be furloughed for each job. Each job is separate and the cap applies to each employer individually. So a furloughed employee can take part in volunteering work or training as long as it does not provide services that generate revenue for or on behalf of your organisation. However, if workers are required, for example, to complete some online training courses while they are furloughed, they must be paid at least the net minimum wage for the time spent training, even if this is more than 80% of the wage that will be subsidised. Now, if you are limiting them to the furloughed amount, then obviously that's all they will receive, less their tax and national insurance. But you are able to make up their pay if you so wish as their employer to their full amount. But obviously you will only get a grant from the government for the lower of 80% or 2,500 plus the employer's NI plus the auto enrolment costs. What do you need to do to work out what you can claim? Well, you'll make a claim for the wage costs through the scheme. It's the employer that will receive the grant from HMRC for the amounts that I previously mentioned. This will properly start to be able to be paid from the end of April, once HMRC have set up their portal to be able to make the claims. But obviously they're writing the system from scratch, and we'll wait and see if it's ready when they say it's going to be. In the meantime, employers will have to make the payments to staff and then wait to claim it back through the portal from HMRC. So I think that gives everyone a significant background to how this scheme is going to work. In terms of how you claim, it's based on their wages at the 28th of February this year. So assume they were full-time or part-time. However, it doesn't include fees, commission or bonuses on that 28th of February wage. If the employee has been employed for a full 12 months prior to the claim, you can claim for the hire of the same month's earning in the previous year, so February 2019, or the average monthly earnings from the 2019-20 tax year. If the employee has been employed for less than a year, you can claim for the average of their monthly earnings since they started work. So in order to make the claim, you're going to need various details regarding the employment, the PAYE reference number and the number of employees being furloughed, the claim period, the amount to claim, and your bank account number and sort code together with your contact number and phone number. However, if you outsource your payroll, say to Davis Grant, then no doubt we will be dealing with this for you. So hopefully that provides you with a lot of information regarding this scheme. If you have any further questions, please submit them and we'll try and answer them as soon as possible. I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague Ben, who will be dealing with some other aspects of government support. Thank you.
Good morning all. So I'm going to start off by talking about the Corona Business Interruption Loan Scheme, which is a loan up to £5 million per business. And this can be over different types of financing, whether it's a term loan, an overdraft, or invoice discounting. So the loan is no interest for the first 12 months, and there should be no fees for the first 12 months either. But even though the government are putting a guarantee on 80% of the loan, the borrower still remains liable for 100% of the debt. In terms of how to go about getting these loans, the government hoped they'd be up by early this week, and I think it took them a few days this week to get all the information around to all of the providers. But your first point of call should be your own bank. There are about 40 banks currently that can do these types of loans, so your first point of call should be the bank that you currently bank with. As you can imagine, they're being contacted by so many different businesses at the moment that they're prioritising their own customers. However, if you don't get the support you need from your bank, or you just can't get through to them because they are so busy, please do speak to one of us, because we do have a network that we can try and support you with and try and get you into to get a loan from a different bank. Yeah, early in the week, the banks were trying to get everyone, no matter on the size of the loan, to put a personal guarantee, which was quite outrageous, really, when the government made a point that if you got one of these loans, your house wouldn't be at risk. The government have now intervened, and you can get up to 250,000 without putting a personal guarantee. So if you're currently negotiating a loan with your bank, or they're trying to make you put a personal guarantee and it's under 250,000, you should say that this isn't right and definitely follow that up. The government has said it should be an easy process to get these loans set up. However, as always with any bank and trying to get some funding from a bank, it's a difficult process. They're still asking for you to provide them with numerous documents, whether that's kind of last 3 years accounts, management accounts, your debtors, your creditors. They are still asking for all of this information. So again, if you are a client of ours, please do speak to us. We'll try and provide you with as much information as you need. So that's on the business interruption loan scheme. If you have got any questions on that, please do send them through, and we will answer them after we're finished. Moving on to the small business grant funding. So there's a few different grants that are currently available. We'll start with, there's a 12-month business rate holiday for all retail, hospitality and leisure businesses starting from April 2020. This now also includes estate agents and letting agents, where when they've initially announced the scheme, it didn't include them. But I think the government have realised that they should be included. If your rateable value is between 15,000 and 51,000, and you're also in those sectors, retail, hospitality and leisure, then you can get a cash grant of up to 25,000 per property. So to find out your rateable value, you can do this online. If anyone wants to know, please do ask the question and we'll send it over. But you just put in your address and it tells you what the rateable value of your property is. Again, to get the grants, you have to be registered for rates with the local council. So I saw there was one question that came through, that if you're in a shared office and you're not registered for rates, can you ask the landlord to provide you with the grant? Well, that's really for everyone in the office to negotiate with the landlord, but the money will be going to them because they're the ones who are registered for the rates. If you are a small business who claims the small business rate relief, so this is if the rateable value of your property is up to 15,000, and this is for any type of business that claims the small business rate relief, then you can claim a 10,000 grant from the government. All of the grants are being organised by the local councils, and they should have started contacting businesses this week. So hopefully you've either been contacted yet, or if you haven't been contacted, hopefully you'll be contacted next week. I'd say if they haven't tried to speak to you by next week, then it's worth following up with the local council. But all of the money will be coming from the local council, and it will be coming directly to the businesses. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. If there is any further questions, please just send them in the question and answer box. And I'm going to pass back over to Neil to kind of round up on everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Right, so I just want to cover off a few more, a few areas that may not have been considered. Unfortunately, I think inheritance tax is an area that should come into people's minds. We don't know how this is going to affect everybody, but I must say, if you haven't yet made a will, it's something that you should consider. If solicitors are still operating, I think that's the best choice that you should make. If not, there are online options. It's just an area that you should consider. Also, there's enduring powers of attorney to get into place for loved ones, or anybody actually that might need help if they're incapacitated. That is quite a long process, but perhaps one that should be, again, thought about and started even in this current climate. If you're paying funds across to support people and lump sums out of savings, that can have an inheritance tax effect. And I really encourage everyone to make suitable notes and document what's been done, how much, to who, and when. Also, if you are making gifts out of income for inheritance tax purposes, which had certain benefits, that has to be gifts out of income. If your income has stopped and you're now making gifts out of capital, there's different tax implications of that. If you are doing so, reconsider, speak to us, and we'll talk you through that. Bank guarantees is another area. If you're lucky enough to have some savings, bank guarantee is only up to £85,000 per individual. That doubles up if you've got a joint account. I'm not saying that the banking system is going to fall over, but if you want to be, if you're in the position where you've got more than that, just check about spreading it around to other institutions to protect yourself. Limited company accounts, there's a bit of a quirk in that. If any directors are signing off limited companies accounts in the current period, you might need to get a set done for your government support loan or any other reasons. Those accounts are fundamentally prepared on what's called the going concern basis, which means that your directors are making a claim that the limited company will carry on trading from a year after you sign the account. So if you're signing them now, that's a year from now. Clearly, there's a huge amount of uncertainty whether that will be the case. We're talking about to clients who are signing accounts now about that and talking them through. Just make sure you think about that. Because there are implications about limited liability for directors if you sign those accounts off on the wrong basis. So it's a bit of a left field comment, but something that certainly needs to be thought about. And if there are any non-DOMs out there, there are some relaxations to the rules about the number of days you can be resident if you're unable to leave because of the coronavirus effects. So there's a few lesser known things to think about. But also I want to finish on a bit of a positive note before we go to Q&A, and that is that at some stage this situation will unwind. And when it does, business will start to pick up to whatever level we don't know. And it's important to plan for that, as well as thinking now about an emergency plan for the business, minimizing all your ongoing costs, dealing with overheads, making sure that you speak to people. I'm sure everybody's been doing that anyway. Looking after your existing customers, stay close with them, try and support them as best as you can. That'll pay back in the long run. Keeping close with your staff, pivoting to different services, pivoting to different skills on staff. They're all things that we need to start thinking about now the shock of this is starting to subside. And if you have time, and probably quite a few have more than you would like, think about what it's going to be like on the other side. Start to plan about what you're going to be able to do, what opportunities are out there, how you can make your business more robust, and so on going forward. I think that's equally as important as it is to deal with the situation that we is now. Perhaps a little bit premature for some, but then again, some businesses are affected differently to others. Some have completely closed down. Some, a lucky few, are actually thriving if they're in a relevant sector, and quite a few will be somewhere in between. But the message is, take the opportunity to plan things on the way forward. So that's all I wanted to say at the moment. We'll now be opening up for the question and answer session. We've had an awful lot through, and I'm going to hand back to Nick in the background, who's going to hopefully feed some of those questions through to us.
Thank you, Neil. Oh, excuse me, glass of water required. Thank you, Neil. Yes, we have lots and lots of questions. So I'd like to thank Barry, Ben and Neil, obviously, for the insight that they've already given us. And also welcome Stephen and Jay, the other partners at Davis Grant, to this discussion at the end so that everyone can get in. I can see there's a few themes coming through in the questions. Perhaps the most notable is dividend and salary takers, company directors like that. So I don't know if anyone has any guiding comments on that, and I'll go through and pull out some specific questions as we go.
Thanks, Nick. As I did refer to in my talk on the job retention scheme, directors are in the difficult position that they would have to prove that the business is completely closed down and they're not carrying out any activities for the business to be able to claim that they're furloughed. Now, if that is the case and they can put themselves on furlough, then they will be able to claim, but again, it will be based on whatever they draw under PAYE as at February 2020, and this will not include any income from dividends. That is not payroll income.
Okay, so Barry, I've got a question here from Ian. If you're a director of a business that is employed also by the business, taking dividends from the company, I would assume that you wouldn't be able to furlough yourself, the director, which in turn could, because that would leave your business without anybody with the legal duties of keeping the business running.
Well, no, I think it comes back to the point. If you can show that all operations of the business are ceased and you're not dealing with any admin at all, e.g. you don't run the payroll or you're not dealing with suppliers or general queries whilst the business is shut, then I think you can possibly claim. But if you are dealing with any activities of the business, then I don't think you can.
Yeah, related to that is a question from Joe. If a director is making a claim for their furloughed employees, then does that count as doing work for the company, which means they can't furlough themselves?
Potentially, if they're running the payroll and making the claim, then possibly yes. But if they outsource the payroll to a bureau like Davis Grant, then possibly they may be able to claim.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much, Barry. I'm just looking for any other questions to do with dividend income and furloughing. Perhaps I'll move on to more generally furloughing. There was a question. Oh, actually, no. This one's a good intermediary. Is from Neil. Our company is made up of only 2 directors, both on PAYE. Our incomes are supplemented by dividends. How does the furlough scheme relate to companies in our position? I guess you kind of already answered that. So let's see what else we've got. Kieran has asked about the furloughing scheme as well. I hope we've answered your question there, Kieran. And I guess just announced yesterday was the support for the self-employed. So there's a question here from Rachel. If you were self-employed, last 3 tax issues, maybe tax years meant there, but moved to limited company set up in the last year, are you still eligible for self-employed support?
On that question, you need to be continuing to be self-employed in the current tax year and affected by the virus. So in that instance, if the self-employment had stopped, then no, you're not eligible for that. Equally, on the other foot, if your business has started since the 6th of April 2019, at the moment you're missing out as well. They're only going up to people who have submitted self-employed income on tax returns up to 5th of April 19.
Understood. I can't locate it right now, but I know there was a question to do with, firstly, pension income being counted in that calculation, but also how things are calculated if you have a mixture of dividend and PAYE income.
The amount you need to have, look at your total taxable income, and if the self-employed element of that is more than 50%, you will apply for the grant. So look at your total income first, strip out the self-employed income and look at the proportion. And then if that is eligible, if the self-employed element is less than £50,000 a year, then you'll be eligible for the grant.
Understood. Thank you very much. We've also got a few questions. Thank you to Teresa and Janet for their questions, which are around the 50k a year limit on the support. Teresa specifically just said, I made over 50k this year, but less in previous years. Is it an average taken over the years?
Yep, it's an average over the last 3 years tax returns. So you'll look on the tax returns that you've submitted for the 16-17 year, 17-18 and 18-19 tax years, and they'll be averaging those. Okay.
And a question from Rohit, which I think is really on the nose. What if you are just over the 50k? For example, you're in that 50k to 60k bracket.
As I understand it, you're going to miss out. The 50,000 is an ultimate ceiling, and I can't see any scope for anyone that is marginally over.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, right there, Rohit. I don't think that's the answer you wanted, but hopefully, as we're aware, things are changing every year, every day. So,
yeah. Unfortunately, there are large sections of society and business that are still missing out. And we don't yet know how those are going to be filled. We'll have to wait and see. Mm-hmm. Let's hope that the support is extended and it does catch almost everybody.
Understood. There is some general questions here. Specifically, Lee has asked about furloughing. Is there a link to HMRC or a phone number to call HMRC yet for help on furloughing and self-employment, or is that something that's still yet to be announced?
Well, there will be a general helpline from HMRC, but in terms of the furlough, until the portal is set up, which we understand is going to be towards the end of April, there's not much you can do to actually apply. The application will be via the portal.
Understood. Whilst we're talking about furlough, I've got a question here from Louisa saying, could you confirm that the tax rate will be basic rate tax for everyone? She gives an example. I will be paying furlough pay to employees who are normally 40% taxpayers. Secondly, if I made employees redundant during March, is she correct in saying that she can now bring them back and put them on furlough?
Okay, so let's deal with the latter question first. Yes, if you made them redundant, you can bring them back and put them on furlough. That is fine. In terms of the calculation of their PAYE, it will be done under normal calculations. So whatever you actually pay them, and if you're limiting it to the furlough amount of the lower of 80% or 2,500, then the PAYE system, whatever software you use, will calculate the tax and national insurance accordingly. And it's completely independent to the government's grant back to the employer for the furloughed amount that they're going to be paying.
Understood. Thank you, thank you for Barry for that.
I would just add to that that the £2,500 a month is well within the basic rate band. So anybody that is on a normal tax code and is being put through the PAYE system as usual won't be into 40% tax.
Understood. Thank you, Neil. Related to furloughing, there's quite a few questions on the technicalities, and apologies if we won't be able to address them directly, everyone. But there are some questions. For example, I can't find it right now. I know there was one about someone who has been hired but wasn't available to start work until this month. Will they be able to qualify for the scheme? I know, Barry, you mentioned a cut-off date in your section earlier on.
Yeah, I think unfortunately they will miss out because they had to have been employed at the 28th of February. And whilst I understand the circumstances, technically they don't qualify if they're not employed at the end of February.
Understood. Thank you very much. Apologies if I've missed any questions on furloughing or support. I think it only right with the time that we've got. We'll try to come back if we can to talk about some other topics such as tax deferral. So an anonymous attendee says, regarding the automatic VAT deferral for businesses, are we required to cancel the direct debit now, or will they automatically adjust this on their side?
No, you absolutely must cancel the direct debit yourself. They will not be cancelling anything. That is a very important action that everybody needs to take right now.
Okay, and an additional question, I think, from the same asker. How does payment work for the accumulated VAT after? I guess they're saying they don't have the VAT to pay now. When are they going to have to pay it?
The missing quarter that we can get deferral on now is payable at the end of March next year for limited companies, and a few days later if you're unincorporated. So it's really just a pause for one quarter at the moment, which you have to pay back in a year's time. All the support they're saying is going to be ongoing. So it might well be that if things don't recover quickly enough, they'll roll that out for another quarter, or the things that they're putting on for 3 months, they'll extend to 4, 5 and 6 months. Those will be issues that follow on as time progresses. But as it stands now, it's just the next quarter is not payable. Cancel your direct debit, and it's going to be repayable in one hit at the end of March next year. Saying that, there's also the time to pay plans that are around, and by then businesses should be in recovery mode. Cash will be tight, cash flow will be difficult, and we'll have to see what the revenue and the government's view on spreading it further at that time is. But these are all things for the future that we'll have to deal with as things unwind.
Understood. So that's VAT. There's a question from Jonathan here that came in very early on in the call, so it's clearly very important to him. The monthly tax, I'm assuming PAYE he means here, and national insurance. Can he have a 3-month holiday on these payments? And if so, when can they have that holiday?
Yeah, I mean, that's under the time to pay arrangements for PAYE. I think we have to phone up every month and defer that as you go along, because you don't yet know the hardship until you've got to that liability. But I have said that it's available for 3 months on a rolling basis at the moment.
Understood. I'm just looking for other questions on deferrals or the grants. No, that one's on furloughing. Excuse me while I just find something else. The furloughing clearly seems to be a hot topic, so I will try and come back to as many of these questions as I can. Here's a question about the grants and the rate relief. If you have multiple small business units, can you claim 10K per unit?
So yeah, if you're registered, if you have numerous properties that are all currently claiming the small business rates relief, each of those properties can claim the grant. So it's not one per business. It's if you have numerous properties, all of the properties can claim them effectively.
Understood. Thank you, Ben. And Lee asks, it sounded like, he's just checking his thinking here, that the 10K grant was available to any business with a rateable value up to 15K. Is that correct? Because I know that it's...
Correct, yeah. Any business that has a rateable value up to 15,000 will currently be claiming small business rates relief. So if you're one of those businesses, no matter what type of industry you're in, you'll be able to claim the 10,000 grant.
Yeah, and Ben, I know you did address this question in your session, so apologies if I'm repeating it, but there's also a really nice comment from Mark that I'd like to share with the call. But Howard asked, if we share an office with another company, we are registered for small business rate relief, but not the other company. Is there anything that can be done about that?
No, so it will only be the company that is registered with the local council that will be able to claim this, will get the grant. If they're like that situation and you either sublease or you've got someone else in your office, it's up to you whether you want to share that with them, but the grant will only be given to the business that is registered with the council.
Yeah, on that, Mark has shared from his experience that things such as the shared working spaces, Regis, Hive Southend, I think in his case, are, because they're paying all the grant, all the rates on the property, they're not eligible for any.
Correct. Yeah, any shared office where effectively it's a serviced office and you're just paying a 1 monthly fee, you're not registered for the rates. It'll be whoever is registered for that property with the local council that will get in the rate relief. So again, if there's 4 of you in the office, whether you want to go to that person and say, well, look, we're the businesses, are we able to share that? Potentially they might feel nice and share that between all of the businesses, but it will only be that one business that's registered with the council who will get the funds.
Okay, thank you there. I think I just saw a question on the loan scheme, and thank you to a commenter who shared, Firoz, who shared a response from HSBC in the chat saying
yeah, I've read that just before actually. So correct, if you can get these funds are for businesses that are struggling. If you've got your healthy balance sheet, you've got money in the bank, and you could get a normal loan. When you go through the process, if the bank think you could get a normal loan, they'll recommend you get that and not the government supported loan. So yeah, that is correct.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Nick, just jumping in there, I've seen a question from someone asking if the grant to self-employed individuals is repayable. No, it is not, but it is fully taxable. So you'll need to add that to your income in the relevant tax year.
Okay, thank you very much. Just looking through, I think we might have to go back to furloughing. Let's start off with a simple one that I know we've covered, but it's worth answering again. When and how do we submit a claim to HMRC on the furlough scheme?
Right, so the claims will be submitted as soon as the portal is available, which we understand at the moment is going to be towards the end of April. And there's certain information you'll have to put on the portal, which will include the EPAYE reference number, the number of employees being furloughed, the claim period, the start and end date, the amount claimed per the minimum length of furloughing is 3 weeks, is the minimum. Your bank account code and sort code and account number, your contact name and your phone number. But again, if you have a payroll bureau like Davis Grant running your payroll, it's likely we'll be able to deal with that for you.
Understood. Thank you, Barry. Ian asks, did we say that a furloughed employee can volunteer to do activities within the organisation, i.e. non-revenue raising?
No, I think the reference to volunteering is to external volunteering. I don't believe that's meant to cover volunteering, because if you do any work for the company, you have to be paid the net minimum wage, at least the net minimum wage for the time you spend on any work for the company. I don't believe that's compatible with calling it volunteering. What you can do for the company is, if there's a training element to your job, so for instance in professional circles we have to do CPD courses, you could sit down and do a CPD course, but you must ensure that the employee is being paid at least the net minimum wage for the time he spends on the CPD course or the training course.
Thank you. A question from Anonymous. If an employee has facilities to do work on behalf of the company, but are unable to do so because of being a carer for someone who is sick or caring for children, can they be furloughed? And if so, how much can the director claim for them?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of whether you've got the facilities to do work, it's whether you actually do any work for the company. So if you don't do any work for the company, then the company can furlough you. If you do any work, they can't furlough you.
And a question recently posted, sorry.
And if it's because they're sick or they're caring for someone who's sick, technically they should be put on statutory sick pay from day one. That should be their first point of call. It's only if there is no work for them to do for the company should they then be furloughed.
Understood. Thank you, Ben. Related question that was just posted in chat by Matthew. If I have an external contractor, which I pay by monthly invoice, can I furlough them? And I think, yeah, that's the question.
Well, if they're a contractor and they're invoicing, so they're not under PAYE, you can't furlough them because they're not an employee. They have to be employed.
Understood. So the message there is they have to be on the PAYE scheme to be able to.
They have to have been on the PAYE scheme of the company as at the 28th of February this year to qualify for furloughing.
Understood. Thank you.
I've seen a question, sorry to butt in again, Nick.
No, please do.
About what is the furloughing based on? Someone with, for example, a low basic plus commission, even if it's regular commission and bonuses, what is it worked out on? It is just the basic salary is what counts for the amount. Commission, bonuses and so on are specifically excluded.
Plus the employer can claim the employer's NI and the auto-enrolment contributions on top of the salary.
Yeah, the £2,500 amount is plus employer's NI and the auto-enrolment cost.
Correct.
Sorry, Nick, just jumping in. Just saw one question about, will Davis Grant need permission to furlough an employee? So if we do currently do your payroll and there's employees that you're furloughing, please do email to our payroll department to tell them the date that they stopped working for the company and that you would like to furlough them. When the portal's all set up and running next month, we will then get this set up on your behalf. We'd recommend you, if you use anyone specifically for your HR, to liaise with them first, because depending on the employee's contracts, you might need to get a document signed by the employee. So please do speak to HR first, but also email our payroll department.
Yeah, I would just add that you probably will need a document signed by the employee in almost all cases to confirm and document that they have agreed to the furlough. But I don't see any problems in most cases. I'm sure employees will not give up the chance to get some salary rather than nothing.
Thank you for that. There's a few questions to do with grants. One that I believe came in earlier on around property income, a letting income that doesn't qualify for letting relief, but I guess the question was around what qualifies for that relief and the grant. So
is this for the small business relief or?
Well, I'll answer it from in terms of what's included for the self-employed individuals, because there's been a question or two about whether property income is included. Investment income would include rental income unless that business is wrapped up as a trading business, in which case it might apply for self-employed income. But I would have thought that on a low level, investment income includes property rental income, and it would not be included.
Yeah, the only point I would add on about property investment income is that if you have a number of tenants, whether commercial or residential, that are not paying you at the moment, unfortunately, you've got no recourse on that, certainly for the next 3 months. And thereafter, you can come to an arrangement on how they're going to settle that, if that's what you agree with them. But if you do have loans against the property, you could well try and obtain a mortgage holiday, whether it's a buy-to-let loan or other form of loan for the property.
Yeah, and in connection with that, landlords are not allowed to evict anybody for 3 months either.
Nick, we're just going to jump on a question by Justin Roberts at 11:13. So there's 2 questions here. One is, if you're over the 50,000 over as an average over the 3 years, this is the profit that goes onto your tax return. It's not your turnover for the self-employed business; it's the profit. Then you won't get any of the income from the government. And if you're a year behind your tax return, you get 4 weeks to file your 18/19 tax return from yesterday. So you've got 4 weeks to get that tax return in. If you get that in and it's under the 50,000, the average over the 3 years, or if you've only got 1 year and that year's under the 50,000, then you'll get the income from the government.
Thank you very much, gents.
I also have seen a question by Sally J. Mason regarding maternity leave. The current government guidance on the job retention scheme does mention maternity leave, but basically what it says is that individuals who are on or plan to take it must take at least 2 weeks off work, 4 weeks if they work in a factory or workshop, immediately following the birth of the baby. This is a health and safety requirement. In practice, most women start their maternity leave before they give birth. If your employee is eligible for statutory maternity pay or maternity allowance, the normal rules apply and they're entitled to claim up to 39 weeks of statutory pay or allowance. Employees who qualify for SMP will still be eligible for 90% of their average weekly earnings in the first 6 weeks, followed by 33 weeks of pay paid at 90% of their average weekly earnings or the statutory flat rate. So I don't think they could go on furlough because they're off on statutory maternity pay anyway.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Here's a question from Anonymous. Is there any advice in taking higher dividends this year, since the government may need to increase tax rates next year to help recoup part of their assistance during the current crisis?
Well, we can only go with the rules that are out there at the moment. So it's a possibility, but we don't yet know what the government are going to do with tax rates going forward.
I mean, it's a good chance they will go up in the future, but you know, we haven't got a crystal ball.
And I guess Colleen asks about the employment, the support for the self-employed. She asked that the Chancellor said that he estimates it covers 95% of people. Do we feel this is really true, as she feels there are still so many who are not covered?
Well, yeah, I tend to, I don't know where the government gets some of their statistics from, or what that 95% represents. I can certainly see there are big holes in what they're doing. I've seen something today that 1.5 million self-employed people are not going to be covered by this. There's big holes, absolutely, which is tragic for some.
Understood. Thank you very much. Here's an anonymous question. I think we've made this clear, but just in case. If the employee is on furlough, you mentioned that the directors can top up their wage if they choose. Would this mean the employee is still allowed to work from home?
I don't see where working from, if they're on furlough, they can't work at all. The employer can certainly top up their wage to between the 80% or 2.5 to what they normally earn, or part of it. But let's make it clear that if they are being furloughed, they can't work for the business.
Understood. Thank you very much. I've seen two questions here, one from Rachel that says, what if the company does not have the cash to pay furloughed employees? What are their options there? And there was also a question related to that about what happens if they place employees on furlough, but then the business closes down after the fact. Can they get out of the scheme, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, obviously businesses are expected to fund or try and get funding for the furlough payments prior to being repaid by grants from the government from the end of April onwards. If they do go out of business, then I think any administrator or liquidator would probably be able to claim the furlough grant, and hopefully would then make recompense to the employees. But that's quite a complex area, to be honest.
Understood. Just looking through the questions here, apologies. Here's a question from Kieran on the loan scheme. When applying for support from your bank, it's obviously advantageous to qualify for the loan scheme rather than a regular loan. You mentioned you will need to demonstrate you are struggling, but am I right to say you will need to appear viable? It's a difficult line to walk. Is there any advice for Kieran there?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. How you can actually show to the bank that you need one of these loans. When do you need to show that you're viable, or do you need to show that actually you're struggling? I think the bank are going to ask for your last 3 years accounts, up-to-date management accounts, and various other documents. And I think that is a discussion to be having with your bank manager or whoever you're dealing with at your bank to try and get whatever loan you need. If they might say to you, well, actually, you've got a very healthy balance sheet. Why do you need this? And I think it's for the business to show the future sales are dropping off, which as expected, and why they need the government support.
Hi, Nick. I've also just seen a question: can furloughed employee work for another business whilst on the JRS scheme? So you can be furloughed by one employer, but can and continue to work for another as long as it's permitted within your employment contract. Because whilst you're furloughed, you are still under the terms of your employment contract. So all other conditions of your employment contract, i.e. accrual of holiday pay, etc., still continue.
Thank you very much. A question from Joe. Do you have to actually be claiming the small business rates relief to claim the 10K grant, or just be the rate pay on a bill with the appropriate rateable value?
I think if your rateable value is under the amount, the council automatically apply the small business rates relief. So yeah, if your rateable value is under that, then you'll be claiming the small business rates relief anyway, so therefore you'll automatically be eligible for it.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Nick, I've seen a question saying, can employees claim furlough independently? And if so, who do they contact, HMRC? No, they can't. The furlough scheme is a grant from the government to the businesses, completely separate to separate and related to what the business pays to the individual. So that has to be done through the company, and the furlough amount goes to the business, who then pays the individuals through the PAYE scheme.
Just seen a question come through from Felicity. As you've just done your 18-19 tax return, they'll take the income based on that. The 19-20 tax return is not coming into account. It's the tax return, the last year's, which is 18-19.
Thank you, Ben. I think there was some questions from people on that theme around when their tax returns were submitted, and how does it impact people if they still have previous years to submit?
I think the government wants all years brought up to date, including 2019 tax year, and that's why they've given an extension of a month to do so. They want to be running, because the calculations are coming from the revenue, as I understand it. They're going to be looking through their systems and seeing who is eligible, and then contacting those people to complete a form online. So first step would be to make sure that all of your tax returns, including and up to 2019, are properly submitted, and so they can run their analysis from there.
Understood. So I can see a question here from Claire, and I think there was one earlier from Justin around what they should do if they haven't yet submitted that tax return. Can they get support?
Well, speak to us, or we can help you out, or if you've got another accountant, speak to them, but they've got to be submitted.
Understood. Thank you.
I think we're just past 12 o'clock, and I think we could really go on with this for quite some time. So I think we'll just take a couple more questions, and then we'll need to tie up. So what do you see out there, Nick, that we haven't really quite addressed yet?
That's a good question. Apologies to anyone whose questions I've missed. I will make sure to keep a record, and we will try to either follow up with you if we have your name and you're a client, or we'll try and address them in future communications.
I've got one from an anonymous attendee. If you're a one-person limited company, then what do you take into account for the furloughing? Is it just the basic salary and not the dividends? As Barry mentioned earlier, yes, it is only the salary as far as the furlough is concerned. Dividends do not come into the calculations. And then you've also got the considerations of the director, a one-man band actually not doing anything and being on furlough. So there's a couple of angles there to consider.
Understood. Thank you.
I mean, all I would say is we'll be publishing more guidance as and when it becomes available. So keep your eyes on our website, and also mail shots that will be sent out.
Yeah.
A few people have asked if this has been recorded. It has, and I think this will be sent round to everyone who signed up for the for today as a recording.
Yes, that is absolutely right, and we'll be answering any questions that have been put up and not addressed today and over the next few days, so watch out for that too. So I think it's really time to wrap up now. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We hope this has been informative and valuable to you. We're here, all our team are working remotely, everything is up and running. So it's business as usual as much as we can from Davis Grant. We're here to support our clients, our contacts, and everybody that's listening. So I'll just close by wishing everybody well. Thank you for listening, and stay in touch. Thank you very much.